Next, I'm excited to introduce our final session of the day, which is a TED-style presentation, Resilience from the Ground Up, Community Solutions That Work. This session highlights powerful community-led approaches to climate adaptation. We'll hear from leaders at D-Lab, Build Change, and Re+Connect as they share how locally driven, inclusive solutions are making a real impact and what it takes to scale those efforts. Each speaker will have 10 minutes to present their work. First up, we have Monica Schroeder, Vice President of Global Engagement at Build Change. Build Change is a nonprofit organization that mobilizes people, money, and technology to transform systems for regulating, financing, building, and improving houses around the world. Please join me in welcoming Monica to the stage.
Jason. This was kind of not how we're supposed to do it, but we decided just to soak up the energy. We're going to sit up here while the other talks are being given.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure being with you here today. I'm Monica Schroeder. I am with Build Change, and I wanted to start with a story. Namely that in 2017, Hurricane Maria hit the Caribbean. I think a lot of us saw on the news that Puerto Rico was heavily affected and the recovery efforts and the blackouts that affected that island. And what people didn't hear about as much, but equally as important, were the devastating impacts that it had on the island nation of Dominica. Dominica, very small country of about 70,000 people, suffered 95% damages to its housing stock and over 226% of its GDP. This is enormous. And yet, after that happened, Dominica set a goal of becoming the first climate resilient nation. And how are they going to do that? They wanted to reach those homeowners affected by the storm and help them build back better, help them improve their community resilience. And that's where Build Change comes in, and that exactly encapsulates the approach that we take as well. So at Build Change, we have a vision that every home should be disaster resilient. Let me see if my clicker works. If not, I'll just say next slide. I can keep going while we move to the next slide. So we are a global leader in systems change for resilient housing. What does that mean? It means that we address the three key barriers to resilient housing: policy, money, and technology. Policy, what is the enabling environment that allows resilient housing to thrive? What are the bottlenecks that are inhibiting homeowners from having access to disaster and climate resilient housing? We help unlock those bottlenecks. We help create those programs. On money, how do we make resilient housing more affordable to a greater number of homeowners? Is that through public sector or through market-based solutions? We look at both. And technology, what are the technologies, both traditional construction technologies, not all technology is digital, as we all know. So what are the technologies that we can learn from the homeowners living in these climate-affected communities? And how can we integrate them with digital technologies to improve effectiveness and scaling? So that's our model. That is our theory of change and how we operate. And I wanted to tell you a little bit on why we do this. And I think that this is, so many of the speakers today have spoken on this issue. Next slide, please. Inadequate housing is an enormous problem. By 2030, 40% of the world's population is projected to live in substandard housing. This is, access to adequate housing can have so many benefits. It can have important health benefits, safety benefits. It can improve a country's GDP. And yet, as the insurance panel was talking about earlier today, if you saw, there are enormous damages that come when housing infrastructure is not resilient and when it is vulnerable to disasters. Next slide, please. So where Build Change works is oftentimes in communities like this. Communities that are informal, self-built, often by the homeowners themselves or with the help of a few generous friends. These are single family or multifamily units, but they're one story, a few stories. And oftentimes, because they are informally or self-built, without the guidance of an engineer or an architect, they have not been constructed to withstand the impacts of disasters and climate, which are increasing every year. And to me, this is a beautiful picture because it shows the enormity of the scale of the problem. This is just one neighborhood. And yet, there are so many people living there that have knowledge, that have investment in that community. And so we look at it not as a problem to solve, but as an opportunity. How do we support them? How do we help protect their investment? Some of you who were in my earlier session heard me say that homes often represent 50 to 90% of a family's assets. That's how much they have invested into their homes. And so we want to help them protect that asset. Next slide, please. So housing is disaster resilient. It's affordable, it's sustainable, it's healthy, it's an asset. It must be adaptable, it must be scalable, and it must be locally appropriate as well. So we work through what we call a homeowner-driven approach to housing. We support homeowners to make the decisions, to have not the sweat equity model that we most often see in housing aid, where they're building themselves and they have to do all the work, but rather a decision equity model. How do we empower them to take ownership of these decisions and to be able to make choices about the materials that they use, the staff that they hire to construct, the designs that they need? Do they run a home-based business? Do they need a space for a garment shop? Are they planning on having more children? These are all important decisions that every homeowner deserves to have in the creation of their home, and we support them to integrate these. Next slide, please. So for Build Change, this is a systems approach. Housing doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is dependent on a number of contextual factors, and we're really proud of our impact so far. We have been able to influence over 85 policies, and as of last year, we've made 1.4 million people safer. There are also enormous environmental benefits. We are at the Sustainability Summit after all. And we've looked into the carbon savings generated by improving existing housing as opposed to building new. The benefit of that is that improving existing housing, it's much faster, it's cheaper, and it can save 2/3 of the embodied carbon of new construction in the same location. It helps homeowners have the agency and protect. They like their homes in many cases. They like where they live, they like what they've built with their own hands, and so we help them to retrofit these houses to improve them against disaster resilience. Next slide, please. And we have done so in 32 countries so far. We're currently operational in about a dozen of those countries, and we have had the pleasure of working in often some of the most challenging contexts in the world, and yet there is so much need and so much opportunity, and so we do our best to be flexible and adaptable to the various climates, to the various policy environments, and to the various hazards that are at play. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show you two quick case studies with the time we have left. The first one is the before and after of one of our homeowners in Colombia. So this is in the area of Urabá, Antioquia in Colombia, and we worked with a number of community-based organizations to integrate traditional knowledge into construction. These are Afro-Colombian communities that have been traditionally left out of the policy creation process when it comes to housing. So we integrated their concerns. We held community workshops with them to understand what is it that they need out of their housing that has not been represented in national policies. And you can see our lovely homeowner Gladys here with her constructed house. What's different about these houses? You see that the roof is now connected to the walls. You see improved safety features through the bars. You see windows for the first time. And you see an overall stronger house that is able to deliver on what she and her family needs. Next slide, please. In Indonesia, we have been working since 2004. It was our first country program for Build Change. And we are working on a number of programs, one of which is mitigating extreme heat for the most vulnerable through affordable housing options. So working with homeowners who are living on less than $5 a day. How do you implement low-cost measures for those homeowners in a way that's affordable for them through market-based solutions? A number of ways, cool roofs, ventilation, shade. And then we're also building on legacy of brick and block making support that we've done over the last 20 years and earthquake resilience. And we have been technical advisors to the Indonesian government for the creation of green and affordable housing program. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up, resilient housing is so important for many reasons. You can see it here. It provides safe and permanent homes. It's compliance with building standards, which is critically important as climate and disasters have even more enormous effects year in year. You have cost savings, and I can tell you more about that if you're interested, but there are enormous cost savings. Carbon emissions, and also highly leveraged philanthropy. And that's not something, I don't think we've talked too much about philanthropy here, but with the systems change approach, you can use a little bit of money and unlock financing from multiple sources, which is exactly what we've tried to do in many places, such as Colombia. We took a few $1 million of investment, and we were able to work with the Colombian government to unlock $137 million in financing from the World Bank. It's those solutions that are going to be able to provide scale. It's those solutions that are going to shape the way that we approach resilience and sustainability in the housing sector for the next years to come. Thank you very much. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Monica. Next, I'd like to welcome to the stage Libby McDonald, Associate Director for Practice at MIT D-Lab, where she also serves as a lecturer and teaches D-Lab, Gender and Development. MIT D-Lab works with communities around the world to co-create practical, hands-on solutions to challenges related to poverty, climate, and resilience. Libby brings deep experience in inclusive development and participatory approaches. Please join me in welcoming Libby.
Thank you. Hi. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we think of environmental resilience in low-income communities and how we try to create resilience. So let's see if this works. The green button. That one? Thank you so much. So I not only believe that creativity and collective problem solving are what makes us feel truly alive and connected to one another and to the planet, but at D-Lab we know that creativity is an important key to unlocking solutions that can get us out of this climate change mess, particularly in low resource communities. So this is me. I think we all remember those moments of feeling truly creative, 100% in the moment when we were kids. Here's me with my best friend, Jill Fowles, where we were playing dress up. I think I was Quasimodo. I remember choreographing a dance with her to The Night Chicago Died by Paper Lace, which really dates me. It's the God-given capacity of human beings to create something out of nothing. It's instinctual to think of large-scale, genius-level creativity when we think about innovations that change the world, like AI or the measles vaccine. However, I've done some experimentation to understand how this kind of magic can help solve some of the world's biggest challenges at the local level. This is what we do at D-Lab. And here are a few things we have learned, bottom up. Creativity at the community level leverages cultural knowledge, as well as local materials and know-how, making inventions more likely to be sustainable over time. Incremental. Creativity at the community level can produce incremental change that can eventually result in regional or even global solutions. Infectious. Creativity at the community level shifts mindsets. And this is important. Generating a sense of agency and an empowerment, which in turn sparks even more creativity and even more ideas for solutions to grapple with climate change challenges. Bottom up, incremental, infectious. So there are many papers describing the personality traits, the motivations, or the situations that can increase or decrease creativity. Yet few consider how creativity can be ignited and leveraged to produce positive outcomes. At D-Lab, we think of creativity and innovation in three ways: design for, design with, and design by. At times, there's no question that you need an expert. For instance, the BVACOR, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, maybe somebody knows. The BVACOR TAH, for total artificial heart, designed to temporarily replace a failing heart while a patient waits for a transplant. This is design for, which is critically important. Then there's design with. In the 1970s and 1980s, participatory design became all the thing in international development circles. We were all talking about design with. It came out of Scandinavia, and the idea was that users needed to be consulted to develop innovations that were truly solutions and were truly sustainable. You see, we have yellow and blue, and then yellow and blue every other one, and then green, design by. So design by, our founder, Amy Smith, who's actually an incredibly creative person herself, she said, but wait a minute, can't we take this a step further? What if we taught community members in low resource settings how to design the technologies that they needed to thrive? Design by, or what we call user-generated design. Recently, one of my students said to me, isn't that people-generated design? And I actually think I'm going to start using that, people-generated design. Since then, we've mobilized people-generated design to unlock creativity and solve many kinds of problems that not only design and prototype technologies, but also to launch businesses, to create inclusive policy, and even to design systems to change behavior, ushering in equitable social innovation. We now provide a framework and a 5-day workshop called Creative Capacity Building, or CCB, to spark user-generated design. CCB teaches a replicable problem-solving process and essential skills that can be utilized to create diverse solutions that can be applied to many challenges. Our participants, our CCB participants, frame the problem. They brainstorm a bunch of ideas. They choose the best ideas. They build and test a prototype, and then they refine the prototype, all in 5 days. This is how it works in practice. A few hours east of Accra is Lake Volta, which is the biggest man-made lake on the planet. It provides food and electricity for all of Ghana. In recent years, weeds, invasive species, have overtaken the lake, periodically interrupting the Volta River Authority's capacity to generate electricity. We're talking regular nationwide blackouts. In January of last year, we provided a CCB workshop, a creative capacity building workshop, so that participants could dream up technologies that could be developed to manage the weeds. One technology that emerged was a charcoal press that fabricated briquettes from weeds. Incidentally, on the last day of this workshop was market day in this community. And many of the participants went out and sold these briquettes that you can see in this slide here. Little by little over the last year, the press has grown into an innovation that will be used by a large plant based on the shores of the lake to produce steam, which is required to manufacture textiles. So Panama. Oh, wow. Look at that. So Panama. The Inter-American Development Bank came to us, and they asked us to work in the Cunayala Islands on the Caribbean coast of Panama to support them in solving a problem, which was too much garbage. The community dreamed up some obvious and some not so obvious innovations for solving their garbage dilemma. The first one that I'm going to tell you about, and this is wildly creative, they built cages and they inserted plastic waste into the cages, and then they attached them to the side of the islands and grew green space over the cages. Here's the team. It was a small team who we trained to provide these workshops. The Cunayala Islands were really something. They used food waste from the local schools to make compost for their gardens, and they devised an irrigation system out of plastic bottles. Those two women that you saw in the team photo, they created a for-pay collection and recycling system that was used on 4 of the islands. Okay, I'm going to show you one more picture of my family in Tacoma, Washington, to tell you about collectivization. And I'm going to try to stay right on my talk, because I start talking about this work and I kind of go all over the place. It's really exciting work. Collectivization, here we're preparing for Halloween. I'm the one in the pixie cut. So in 2021, a couple of Colorado School for Mines professors showed up in my office. They were seasoned engineers, but they said, we cannot figure out how to incorporate small-scale artisanal miners in the creation process. They had just won an NSF grant to work in 4 territories. They said, will you come to Columbia and teach us how to really engage small-scale miners so that they are part of the design process? So I'd worked with many informal sector workers, with waste pickers, smallholder farmers, but I'd never worked in mining territories. And due to the high level of gender-based violence in these communities, we quickly realized that to promote gender equity, we needed to adapt CCB to design a movement of women artisanal miners. And they launched Mujeres Mineras Unidas por Colombia. I wish I could show you this video. I wasn't clever enough to quickly get the video in here. It's really something. It's really energetic. So this is what we learned about creativity and collectivization. When populations collectivize around a mission, in the case of the MMUC, it's environmental sustainability in mining territories. They use mercury to process gold, and mercury is really hard on babies in utero. But when you couple creativity and collectivization, it's like innovation on steroids. This group, which now extends to 18 mining territories, is developing, among other things, an approach to utilize green bonds, preserving some of the most biodiverse territories on the planet. So is creativity an automatic pathway to solving climate change? Of course not. But if we begin to unleash creativity in low resource settings, trusting communities to create the prototypes they need for environmental resilience, we will inch towards greater sustainability in low-income regions from bottom up and incrementally across the globe. So that's my message to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Libby. Last but certainly not least, I would like to introduce Jasmine Yiyuan Qin, co-founder of Re+Connect, a civic technology platform that bridges last-mile gaps in disaster relief through collective action and crowdsourced community data. Jasmine has lived and worked alongside communities across the globe to advance equitable, community-driven solutions. Her work centers on shifting power and enabling local communities with the tools and networks needed to build a more connected and resilient future. Please join me in welcoming Jasmine to the stage.
The green button. On a November morning in 2016, I found myself in a conference room packed with sobbing colleagues. It was a special all-staff meeting at my first full-time job at an environmental think tank in Washington, D.C. We gathered to watch Hillary Clinton's concession speech. And in that moment, my budding environmental career was flashing before my eyes. I came to the US to study environmental policy and science after losing my childhood paradise to China's rapid urbanization. It was a river that meandered across a vast grassland where I used to play on its pebbled shorelines. And that loss also sent me down the world's greatest rivers, from the Amazon River to the Ganges, to live alongside communities where I learned that a shared, better future depends on people's creativity, knowledge, and grit. After earning my master's degree, I moved to DC and joined a team tasked with building a never-before-seen platform to monitor the planet's pulse in real time by deploying the best data from around the world. But my unease grew. I was building digital tools in rooms far removed from the people who taught me how to care for the land and water. And by Inauguration Day in January 2017, facing what felt like a losing battle, I fled the nation's capital and found myself walking the cobblestone streets of San Juan, Puerto Rico, searching for something more beautiful. I didn't know then that the island would teach me, and perhaps all of us, something we would need to face yet another historic moment 8 years later. Months after my first trip to Puerto Rico, I watched from afar, heartbroken, as Hurricane Maria slammed into the archipelago. It felt like another paradise lost for me. In the midst of confronting my own environmental career quarter-life crisis, I came here to MIT, looking for new ways forward. While studying at the intersection of design, engineering, and management, as part of my thesis work, I traveled frequently to Puerto Rico, learning from frontline communities and organizations that supported them as part of the work that MIT brought me to. Over the years of traveling and living there, I witnessed and lived through Puerto Rico's many relentless cycles of disaster and recovery, earthquakes, floods, and more hurricanes. And in the wake of these events, often roads collapsed, power was cut, and entire neighborhoods were stranded, and sometimes for months. When disaster hit places like Puerto Rico, where access is limited and communication is unreliable, external organizations often struggle to direct aid, while communities must find their way to survival and recovery. And it was living through these struggles with residents, community-based organizations, and disaster management groups that we co-created Re+Connect to bring people and institutions together to close the last mile disaster relief gaps. And among the countless stories of communities rising from the rubble, one stands out. The work of a group of community health workers in Utuado, a mountainous region in the heart of Puerto Rico. In 2018, still in the wake of Hurricane Maria, the Community Health Promoters Program was created to strengthen disaster resilience from within. These health workers, they're not outsiders. They were neighbors, friends, and family members of the communities they served. And during my time with them, I was welcomed to join their daily home visits, where they checked vitals, delivered medicine, and rebuilt the social fabric that was torn apart by disasters. And through listening, documenting, and sharing human stories, they stewarded human knowledge that otherwise would have been lost. And over just 2 years, 7 health workers visited and recorded repeatedly the needs of over 5,000 households. Without access to digital tools, they built their own system by hand, tracking who moved, who was elderly, and who was living with disabilities. So when disaster struck again, they knew where food, water, and other urgent help was needed. Their detailed records like this helped direct the right resources to the right places at the right time, turning local knowledge and networks into a lifeline where it mattered the most. The community health workers in Utuado showed us that what is possible when we turn to communities for belonging, knowledge, and mutual support. They showed us extraordinary adaptability, innovation, and resourcefulness in the face of crisis. But they shouldn't have to do it alone. Just last month, I learned that the program was forced to shut down in today's climate. And in this age of disasters, no single organization or program can do it all. What we need now are networks of individuals and institutions moving together to build resilience that is distributed, peer-driven, and participatory. Because a movement is harder to disrupt, harder to defund, and easier to grow. Over the past 5 years, with the support of MIT, the Natural Hazard Center, and the National Science Foundation, we have been building Re+Connect together with communities in Puerto Rico. And through this platform, we reimagine resilience as a co-created civic movement by bringing individuals and institutions into alignment and alliance via 3 pillars. We partner with organizations that provide services and resources to communities to co-create resilience actions that look like preparing family emergency plans and mapping community resources, mobilizing networks of citizens to close the last mile gaps. We enable residents to take these meaningful actions with their family, friends, and neighbors together, both in person and online, while strengthening the social bonds that hold the families and communities together before, during, and after disasters. And through these actions, we elevate citizens' collective voice by organizing, visualizing, and sharing their stories and knowledge from the actions they take to help both individuals and institutions to stay informed on their needs and assets. We then translate critical community information into actionable insights that help organizations design smarter, more adaptive programs such as disaster resource and service allocation and municipal resilience planning so that they're grounded in lived experiences. And while disasters often feel too overwhelming to even think about, through peer accountability and support informed by best behavioral and social sciences, we help residents move from good intentions to real timely actions. And in this process, we aspire to convene a network of institutions to coordinate across these community actions and shared knowledge in a co-op model to maximize their collective impact. Last year, in a focused 3-month pilot, we tested Re+Connect with Android users across 10 communities in Puerto Rico. And so far, we've seen hundreds of users onboarded, over 200 resilience actions completed, and nearly half of those actions were taken in groups. We're beginning to see a network effect, one that can amplify the work of a few health workers into a growing civic movement of resilience, built through stronger connections, shared knowledge, and mutual support. And this year, along leaders like Marcus Coleman from United Way and Kendra White at the City of Cambridge, who are also in the audience today, we're exploring how to bring the lessons from Puerto Rico to communities across the country. Our new web-based platform, shaped by active learning with users from the initial pilot, will launch next month. And we know this is just the beginning. And if this speaks to you, we'd love to invite your community to join the movement. We'll work with you to start by mobilizing one neighborhood to take one meaningful action together and share one story we can learn from to advance your community resilience goals. And now imagine thousands of actions stitched across neighborhoods and thousands of stories, which Dr. Brené Brown called data with a soul, woven into a living map of communities and institutions moving together, growing resilience into the civic movement we need today. And this movement has just begun, and you have the power to spark what comes next. And I will leave you with the words from the former Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy. This is the moment, and we are the people who have to take it upon ourselves to stitch together the social fabric of our country once again, because it is the foundation to which we build everything else. It is only when people care about and are vested in one another that they advocate together, that they move together in the same direction. And recognizing that a solution to someone else's problem, even if it is not my problem, it is a solution that we all need, because we're one people and we're united. Thank you.